Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're shifting gears a bit. We're moving beyond just crafting those individual prompts for large language models and diving into how you can actually build real-world applications using them.
Yeah, it's about taking that next step, right? From like asking a one-off question to building something more permanent, more automated.
Exactly. We've talked a lot about how to talk to LLMs. Now it's about how to get software talking to LLMs.
And that's where APIs come in application programming interfaces.
Yeah.
They're sort of the unsung heroes here.
Right. They're the connectors, the bridges that let our code interact with these powerful models automatically behind the scenes. It's not just about you typing into a chat box anymore.
Precisely. APIs allow that shift from manual, one-by-one prompting to, well, fully automated systems where software sends the prompts and gets the responses back.
And that's huge because it means you can unlock some seriously powerful capabilities. You can start automating tasks, adding AI features to apps you already use. It's about scaling up.
Absolutely.
So our mission for this deep dive is really to explore these practical applications. How do we use prompt engineering with APIs? How do we build workflows? We've got some great material looking exactly at this practical side.
Okay, so let's unpack that API idea a bit more. You call them connectors, which is a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Think of an API as a specific set of rules, like a menu in a restaurant, maybe.
Yeah.
Your code orders from the menu, sends a request, and the LLM kitchen prepares the dish, processes it, and sends it back via the waiter, the API response.
Huh, I like that. So instead of me typing summarize this article, my application uses the API's rules to send the article text and the instructions summarize.
Exactly. And the LLM processes and sends the summary back to your application, again, following those API rules, all automated.
No human needed for that specific step.
Right. And that opens the door wide open for automation. Let's talk about that e-commerce example product descriptions. That's a really clear case.
Oh, yeah. Imagine running an online shop with, I don't know, thousands of products, writing unique descriptions for every single one. That's a lot of work.
A ton of work. Or expensive if you hire copywriters for everything. But with an LLM API, you could automate huge chunks of it.
So how would that work? You'd feed it the basics?
Pretty much. Your system takes the product details, category, features, specs, whatever you've got, bundles it up, and sends it to the API with a prompt. Something like, write a compelling product description for a product name that's a category, main features are feature 1, feature 2, feature 3. You structure the prompt well.
And the API just sends back the description.
Almost instantly, yeah.
Yeah.
You get back this hopefully well-written text you can plug right into your website or database. The efficiency gain compared to manual writing is just enormous.
Okay, that makes sense for single tasks. But you mentioned workflows earlier. What about more complex stuff?
Right, because often one prompt isn't enough. This idea of prompt chaining is where it gets really powerful.
Yeah.
You're basically building little pipelines.
Pipelines. Like one step feeds into the next.
Exactly. Think about summarizing a really long document and then translating the summary. You can try one massive prompt, but it might work better.
To break it down.
Yeah. First, you send the document to the API with a prompt like, summarize this text concisely. You get the summary back.
Okay.
Then you take that summary and send it in a second API call, this time with a prompt like, translate the following text into Spanish.
Ah, I see. So the output from the first API call becomes the input for the second one.
Precisely. You break the big problem into smaller, focused steps. It often gives you more control and potentially better quality results.
That's pretty clever. And does it have to be just the same LLM service?
Not at all.
Yeah.
And that's maybe even more powerful. You can start integrating the LLM API with other completely different services.
Okay, now we're talking building real applications, like mixing and matching different tools.
Exactly. Our sources mentioned customer feedback analysis, which is a great example. Imagine you've got customer reviews pouring in. You could send each review to an LLM API first, with a prompt designed just to figure out the sentiment. Is it positive, negative, or neutral?
Right, just get a quick read on the feeling.
Yeah. Then maybe you take that review and the sentiment score and you pass it to a different service, one that's specialized in, say, topic modeling or keyword extraction for customer service issues.
So one service does sentiment, another digs deeper into why they feel that way?
Could be. Or maybe the second service just categorizes it neatly. And then all that data, the original review, the sentiment, the tags, gets stored in a database.
And then you can analyze trends, see what's making people happy or unhappy, build dashboards, that kind of thing.
Exactly. You're building an intelligent, data-driven system by connecting these specialized services together, with the LLM often playing a key role in understanding the unstructured text part.
It sounds incredibly powerful. But I imagine it's not always smooth sailing when you start linking multiple things together like that.
That's a really important point. It introduces complexity, and with complexity come challenges. Latency is one.
Latency. So delays.
Yeah, every time your application calls out to an external API, there's a slight delay waiting for the response. If your workflow has, say, 3 or 4 steps calling different APIs,
Those delays add up.
they can, yeah. It might make your application feel sluggish to the end user if you're not careful. You have to think about how long each step takes.
And cost must be a factor too, right? These API calls aren't usually free.
Definitely not, especially at scale. Different services have different pricing models per call, per amount of text processed, subscription tiers. If your workflow involves lots of calls, those costs can escalate quickly.
So you need to be smart about how you design the workflow. Maybe try to do more in fewer calls if possible.
Exactly. Optimization becomes key. Can you batch requests? Can you make one smarter API call instead of 3 simple ones? You have to balance functionality with cost and speed.
And what happens if one of those services just fails? Like the sentiment analysis API goes down for an hour.
That's the other big one. Cascading errors. If step 1 fails, step 2 probably never happens or it gets bad input. The more services you chain together, the more potential points of failure you introduce.
Which leads us straight into error handling, I guess. You have to plan for things going wrong.
Absolutely critical. You can't just assume every API call will work perfectly every time. Networks glitch, servers get overloaded. APIs sometimes return weird or unexpected responses.
So your application needs to be ready for that.
It needs to be robust. What happens if a call times out? Should it retry automatically? Maybe a couple of times.
Okay.
What if it gets an error message back from the API? Should it log the error and skip that particular task? Or maybe fall back to some default behavior? Or tell the user, sorry, couldn't process that right now.
Right. Anything other than just crashing the whole application.
Exactly. Good error handling is like the difference between a cool demo and a reliable tool people can actually depend on. It takes thought and effort to build in properly.
Okay, so assuming we handle the errors and optimize, what kind of advanced stuff are people building with this? Our sources mentioned some interesting areas.
Yeah, it gets pretty exciting. We're seeing specialized prompt-driven tools pop up for specific industries. Think about legal tech.
Okay.
Imagine an LLM trained on legal documents. You could build a tool where a lawyer uploads a huge contract and a prompt automatically generates a concise summary of key clauses or potential risks.
Wow, that would save lawyers a lot of reading time.
Huge amounts. Or think about medicine. Maybe generating personalized health reports for patients, summarizing their history, and relevant new research, all driven by prompts through an API.
Tailored information, very powerful.
Definitely. And beyond specific industries, there's also this growth in interactive prompt engineering tools.
What do you mean by interactive?
Tools that let you sort of play with the prompt. You write a prompt, see the output, tweak the prompt slightly, see the new output, and keep refining it iteratively.
Ah, so you're not just firing off one prompt and hoping for the best. You're having a back and forth.
Exactly. It's really useful for creative tasks like writing assistance or even code generation. You can guide the LLM more precisely towards the result you want through that kind of dialogue.
That sounds much more collaborative.
It is. It makes the whole process more dynamic.
Now, just to make this really concrete, our material mentioned building a simple chatbot as a practical example?
Yeah, and it's actually surprisingly doable now. With something like Python and one of the major LLM APIs, you can get a basic chatbot running with relatively little code.
Really? So you could actually build something that responds to you?
Absolutely. You write some code that takes user input, sends it to the LLM API with a predefined prompt structure, maybe telling it you are a helpful assistant, and then displays the LLM's response.
That's pretty cool. A tangible result quickly.
Right. And that's just a starting point, as the sources say. From that basic bot, you could add more complex logic to handle different kinds of conversation.
Yeah.
Connect it to a database so it remembers things, or can look up specific information, maybe even personalize responses based on who's talking to it.
Okay, so starting simple, but with lots of room to grow.
Exactly.
So if we bring this all together, the main takeaway here seems to be that using APIs to integrate LLMs into actual applications and workflows just massively amplifies what they can do.
Totally. It takes them from being these like interesting standalone tools you chat with and turns them into core components you can build complex automated systems around.
It's an evolution then, not replacing coding, but changing how we build things.
That's a great way to put it. The sources frame it like that too. Prompt engineering, especially via APIs, becomes this crucial skill alongside traditional coding for building the next generation of software.
Harnessing language models within that bigger picture.
Yeah, using them smartly to solve real problems in new ways.
Okay, so just to quickly recap, we talked about APIs as the key connectors.
Right, the bridges.
How you can automate tasks like content creation, how you can chain prompts for complex workflows,
Like the summarize then translate example.
integrating LLMs with other services for things like feedback analysis,
Mm-hmm.
and then the practical stuff, watching out for latency, cost, errors, and the importance of handling those errors well.
Absolutely. Plus those advanced uses and the chatbot example.
And hopefully you, the listener, can see how those prompts we've focused on before become the building blocks for these much bigger automated systems.
Yeah. So maybe a final thought to leave you with. We're really seeing a big shift in how we interact with technology, aren't we? Language is becoming more and more central. So think about these API-driven workflows we discussed. They're essentially translating our natural language instructions into automated actions. How might that change your work or your field of interest in the coming years?
That's a deep question. What new things become possible when we can instruct complex systems more naturally just using language?
Exactly. What happens is we all get better at speaking the language of AI, and the AI gets better at understanding us through these integrated systems. The potential's pretty vast.
It definitely is. Something to ponder. Well, that looks like all the time we have for this deep dive.
It's been great exploring this. Thanks for joining us.